Hey, church leaders, pastors, business leaders, really quick, I wanted to remind you, coming up in September 16th and 17th, we're doing our first ever church growth conference. We're calling it Church Growth Unleashed. You're not going to want to miss this. We're bringing in some incredible speakers, bringing in Kyle Eidelman from Southeast Christian, Ed Newton from Community Bible Church, my friend Ryan Mayer, who oversees the social media department at Life Church. We're bringing in Aaron Brockett from Tradersport Community Church to do a mastermind for senior pastors. Guys, we're going to be talking about strategies, tactics, how to grow your church. If your church is stuck, or if you just want to take it to the next level, this is going to be the conference for you. So mark your calendars, September 16th and 17th. This September. We're also doing a VIP dinner on the 15th. You might want to check that out. If you sign up now, there'll be an early bird special for the conference. You'll knock $50 off. We hope to see you there. We hope that you'll bring some of your team. And now back to the episode. Church Growth Unleashed, diving into all things leadership and church growth. Provide the help, encouragement, insights that you need along the journey of growing yourself as a leader and your ministry. So welcome back to the Church Growth Unleashed podcast, where we talk about all things church leadership, ministry, growing your church. And you guys are in for a very special episode today, because joining me from San Antonio, Texas, is my good friend, Ed Newton. And he is here today with us, and he is the lead pastor of Community Bible Church, massive church down there in San Antonio, 27,000 members, multi-generational, multicultural. Ed is just a phenomenal leader. He's got 2 master's degrees, and Ed, I just discovered this. You have a doctorate, so I should call you Dr. Ed Newton. That's exciting. Ed is he's married, been married for a long time. We'll find out how long just here in a minute. 4 children. And Ed is going to be with us at the Church Growth Unleashed conference in September as one of our keynote speakers. Ed, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and being with us here today.
No, thank you, man. You're one of my favorite people. And honestly, you're a walking Hallmark card for all of us that know you. Thanks for always being that encouragement to us.
Well, you do the same for me, my man, and it's been that way for a long time. So,
long time.
Man, I'm so excited for our audience today, just to kind of hear from you what God is doing in your life. But before we dive into leadership conversation, I would like them to know a little bit about like who you are, where you're coming from. You spent a long time as a traveling evangelist, and just fill in some gaps for us before you became a senior pastor. The Lord led you to do that. Give us a little backstory.
Yeah, I was saved in high school. I grew up in Orlando, Florida. Both my parents were deaf, and so fluent sign language speaker, no brothers, no sisters, primary interpreter, translator. If anybody's ever seen a movie on Apple Plus called Coda, which is an acrostic for child of deaf adult. So I'm a Coda.
Wow.
And grew up in that world, got saved in high school, couldn't pass the SAT. College basketball was my dream, and I couldn't pass that college admissions exam. God called me to ministry when I was 18, about to graduate from high school. My public high school basketball coach that was not a believer was like, hey, I'm about to graduate, and says there's a great Christian college down in South Florida that needs a point guard. And he kind of randomly just kind of says this, as you kind of do whatever God's telling you to do. And he didn't know how to use language and verbiage of ministry calling and all those things. He was like, I think it'd be a good fit for you. So I go down there, academic probation before I even got there, and about flunked out of college. True story. Had a 2.0 first semester. I have to have 2.0 to play basketball. Meet my wife. She was like magna cum laude. I was, thank the Lord, through all of it. And we got married, and she graduated from college in 97, worked at St. Jude Children's Hospital. And that for me was a place of, a major pivotal shift. I was a Florida kid and moved to Memphis to go to grad school, went on staff at a church while she was working as a research scientist, Danny. It's unbelievable. She was in genetics, and here I am trying to figure out how to do youth ministry. And so that journey of serving at a church in Memphis called Faith Baptist Church, I want to honor my spiritual father, Danny Sinkfield is his name. And he gave me a shot, man. I was 22 years old, just been married. It took me. I graduated a year later than Stephanie, so when I graduated, got married. Back though, and I don't know if you remember these days, Danny, but for anybody that's watching, seminary training's changed for a lot of dudes
Mm.
and women of God as well. It wasn't if you were going to go to seminary; it was where. Like you couldn't get a job, man, if you didn't
Mm.
have a master's degree, and like Jesus couldn't get a job, in most of these churches, and so I had to get a master's degree at that time, and man, this church gave me a shot, and I oversaw college ministry. I was an intern for the first couple months. To be honest with you, I was like unloading trucks, and
Yeah.
I was going to seminary, and I was an intern, and they gave me 15 college kids, and a VHS tape came in the mail. If anybody still remembers what those things were, and it was about Passion Conference with Louis Giglio and all that, and so I'm an intern, just been married a couple months, and take 20 something kids to Passion, and a move of God happens. We start a Bible study in our little 1,200 square foot house. 80 college kids pulling up in our grass in our little home, and man, God's favor gave me a job because the pastor was like, "Hey, I don't know what's going on. You're an intern, and this thing's blown up in a good way.
Mm.
Would you be our recreation pastor, or single adult pastor?" And I was like, I don't know how to do any of that stuff. And he was like, "I won't let you fail." So he became my spiritual father, walked with me, mentored me. 4 years later, God called me into evangelism. That's a crazy story. I won't bore you with all the details of that. But I'm a Bible study leader, helping out a youth pastor friend of mine, because Danny, that's what we do.
Mm-hmm.
Your buddy's a youth pastor. He's like, "Hey, I can't get anybody to work with the seventh and eighth grade guys." I was
Right.
like, "Hey, man, I'll come.
Yeah.
I'll lead those guys. Small little group. They got a preacher, a worship team, and on the Saturday night service, Danny, he goes, "Hey, Ed, God told me to tell you you're supposed to speak tonight." And I said, "Hey, that's not like I'm not. That's not my call. I don't know if I'm any good at that." And
Mm.
he said, "You'll be disobedient to God if you don't do it."
Oh
So
boy.
I stood up, preached 7 minutes, best I could do. And man, in that moment, something shifted
Mm.
in my calling, and I didn't know how to put that into words. I didn't know what an evangelist was. I had no idea. I mean, guys like me were only evangelist I knew was Billy Graham, and I didn't really know him. And I wasn't
Right.
going to be the guy that was going to fill up arenas. Um, but I drive home, man, a 1990 F-150, and I'm driving home, and I'm like, "God, I don't know what this means." So 2003, fast forward, my wife and I resigned from our church. Church was running like 700 people. They take a love offering for us because we're about to have a baby 5 days later. How about that
Oh boy.
one? My
Wow.
dad thought I was crazy. My father-in-law thought I was crazy. All my friends thought I was crazy except for my wife. And we trusted God, jumped in the deep water. The church took a love offering, gave us $26,000. That was amazing. And then said, "Hey, we'll give you insurance if you'll just base your ministry out of the church." I didn't know how to do all this.
Sure.
I'm a local church guy. I wanted to come home to a church that would love me and support me and care for my family, and did that for
Mm-hmm.
13 years. The reason why I tell you that is
Wow.
because that was 13 years of that. And that's when I met
13
you along
years.
the way,
Yeah.
was I was hubbed out of that. My parents started to get sick, and so I had to move back to Florida to take care of them. And then let me back up just a little bit. But I end up at this church that I'm at right now because they found me on YouTube as a guest preacher.
Mm.
And so I came to their men's conference in 2010. Did it for 6 years, and then the pastor one particular day, man, calls me like October 2015. So, and you'll see a pattern here. My whole life has been, whether I was an FCA president, Fellowship of Christian Athlete president at my high school, or my basketball coach, go to a Christian college, or my pastor going, "Hey, man, feel like you need to do this," or a youth pastor that was like, "God told me to tell you this." And then now the senior pastor of this church, who started this church with 137 people, um, gives me the opportunity to be a pastor of a church that has 367 staff members. I've never done this before in my entire life. And he looks at me and goes, "God told me to tell you." So my whole life has been God telling other people to tell me, which causes me to go, I guess he doesn't want to tell me that directly. So, because maybe I don't have the faith to believe him sometimes, which is a whole part of my story of not believing sometimes what God believes about you can hinder you from what God has for you.
Wow. Wow.
So,
Man, I
anyway,
hope you guys heard that.
yeah,
That's so
that's the
good.
journey, man. I left out a lot, but I'm so sorry. This is supposed
No,
to be
I mean,
35
obviously
minutes.
there's a ton there for sure. So you go from this, basically this traveling evangelist, which is where I met you. You were preaching at a camp. I brought my students to this
Mm-hmm.
camp. You preach the guts out of your guts out. The kids get saved. By the way, two of those students are now on my staff
Come
today
on.
that were at Woodlands Camp. And you just tore it up. The Lord used you in massive ways. I tried to I remember trying to tell you, you got to stop being an evangelist. You got to go home. You're like, no, the Lord has called me to do this. You stayed the course. So then you transition into the senior pastor role, massive church, 21st largest church in America, 47th fastest growing church in Outreach Magazine. And you've got almost 400 staff members. You go through this huge transition, right? Your founding pastor
Mm-hmm.
leaves, and I've been through transition 2006. You know about that. I
Yep.
went from
Yep.
youth pastor to high school pastor to senior pastor. All transitions are hard, even when everybody's healthy. They're still hard. Talk to our audience, because a lot of our guys listening today have either they're going through a transition or they're about to, or what were some of the most difficult challenges? Maybe one or two. How did you
Mm-hmm.
navigate that
Mm-hmm.
transition? That is a huge transition
Mm-hmm.
for a founding pastor.
Absolutely. And so the founding pastor who started the church with 137 people literally read in the Old Testament, the priest serves in the temple 25 years and then retires. And I'll give you I'll text the reference. And I'd never, I mean, I've read the Bible multiple times and have never read that. But I think it's like in Numbers or Deuteronomy, it's like the priest serves in the temple 25 years and then assists in the temple, but does not lead in the temple. And he read it literally and wrote in his margin, send Ed Newton to be lead pastor. Um, and I framed it, and I'll tell you why that's important is because I framed it because sometimes when God leads you, every move of God, every transition is marked by baptism. And nation of Israel coming out of Egypt into freedom, Red Sea, Joshua, baptism into the land of promise. And as much as I would love for those baptisms to be like the baptism of Jesus, where the dove descends and the voice of God, sometimes those are baptisms of fire. And you are very familiar with that. And I think the significant leader that you are is probably stemming from a place, because I know your story. I'm familiar with your story. You're one of the most anointed, humble, meek, and meekness is not weakness but power. Men I know, Danny, and as loved as you are, every transition has a moment of transition for other people. And I know that when you stepped into that role, it wasn't probably what you thought it was going to be. Not in regards to the church. I'm just talking about people that would choose to opt out because you're the guy. And so to give a little context, when you're on the road for 13 years, and I'm primarily a youth communicator, everybody is, they love you. You know, you didn't hear if you got any criticism, they never voiced that or put that in a chat bar on Instagram. They just didn't invite you back. So that would be the only quote unquote letdown in a sentiment of like, oh, you don't like me. You just didn't invite me back. Well, you come into a pastor situation and then now 4,000 people leave when you become pastor. 4,000. And this begins the baptism of fire for me. So when I meet with leaders, I'll meet with uh, walking with 6 pastors today at lunch. I tell them all the time, like, I could teach you a lot of stuff on a whiteboard, but it'd probably be better if I just lifted my shirt and showed you the scars.
Wow.
Because
Mm.
those scars speak a story of the refiner's fire. And this is the old phrase that you and I both have heard before, and I can't think of who to attribute this to, but in order for God to greatly use a man, he has to severely wound him. And that was the hard for me. It wasn't that the founding pastor didn't set me up well. He actually set me up as great as he could. And I think I fell into a lot of things that were not healthy in my life, such as the way I thought about myself, how I spoke to myself, where I found my worth and value from. So when you operate in insecurity, insufficiency, inadequacy, and you don't operate from a place of acceptance with the Father, then you strive for it. And what do you do? And this has kind of been my phrase, when you've always been taught fake it till you make it, but what if you feel like you're fake and you're not going to make it? So, and counseling has revealed this to me, Danny. I mean, this is, I'm teaching out of the overflow of counseling to our church. Guys like me, and I think you can relate with this, when you face rejection at that level, and my counselor has walked through a timeline of my life with my deaf parents. They didn't reject me. I just lived in a world of rejection because of people not understanding their disability. Not fast enough, not quick enough, not smart enough. I could go through all of the timelines in my life. And then you get marked by rejection. And it's a spirit. I'm not trying to over spiritualize this, but I believe like 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For I did not give you a spirit of fear." It's a spirit, but the spirit, capital S, spirit of power. But you don't understand how to operate in that realm of how to believe what God believes about you. So you end up operating out of is what most people operate out of, like guys like me and you. You reject me, I don't quit. I just work extra hard to prove to you that I'm not who you say I am. And that is a dangerous play. That works if you are an athlete. It's Damian Lillard who doesn't become an all-star, and then all of a sudden in this commercial, he becomes an all-star. And the question, it's just embedded in my mind right now. It's like an Adidas commercial. What do you say to all of those who said you couldn't do it? And Damian Lillard in the commercial goes, "Thank you for the motivation." And I live that way. So the reason why I say this to somebody that's listening in transition is because if you don't operate out of 12 stones in the river of a calling, God put you here. So the reason why I framed Pastor Robert Emmett, that's the founding pastor's Bible with my name in it, is because when the dark night of the soul came, I needed to come back to a place that God, nobody put me here. God, you put me here. So, but it took me about 4 years to get to that level of clarity in my mind. But it came out of great hardship. And so my counselor said this to me. He said, there are two types of responses for people who go through your level of transition. You quit, or you live your whole life to prove critics wrong. And he said, and both are wrong. I said, what do you mean? He goes, because there'll be another critic. There'll be another doubter. And you'll live your whole life trying to appease people more than the Lord. And it's what Lecrae says. We live for people's acceptance and we die from their rejection.
Yeah.
So anyways, man, that's a journey.
Such gold right there. Hopefully you guys who are going through a transition, you heard what he just said. Ed, thank you for that. Can you dive, there's a recent article that you did in Outreach Magazine, which was fantastic, by the way. If you guys have not read that article, it was the 100 fastest growing churches edition. You spoke a little bit in that article about overcoming the imposter syndrome and insecurity, but you didn't get into, or at least I didn't give you a chance to get into exactly how you did that. And maybe you just revealed it. You saw a counselor, like just. A lot of guys deal with that. They feel uncomfortable in their own skin. Not even if they're not in a transition, just in a leadership position. They haven't come to accept their reality, so they feel like they're an imposter. How did you work through that?
Yeah, I think what ends up happening is we're shaped. So one, it was through coaching and it was through counseling. Two separate things. It was coaching. I want to give proper credit to a man in my life that has been paramount. His name's Steve Cockrum. I would highly recommend anybody listening to this podcast to pick up anything by Steve Cockrum. Cochram.
We could put his name in the
Cockrum.
show notes too.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and it's Five Voices. He and a guy named Jeremy Kubicek. Giant International is a leadership coaching platform, and it's subscription based, and it's like Peloton for leadership, and it's not overtly Christian. It's Christian in DNA, but it's corporate in how it's done, because these are leadership tools that can be used visually. And man, it is like, when I say Peloton, I'm talking about it has the ability that you can 5-minute video here, 2-minute video here, and you can customize your leadership experience. But at the very root of this coaching that I got was Steve Cockrum came and met with me personally. And then I entered into about a 3-year relationship. He lives in London. So I would do Zoom calls just like this. And every week we would deep dive on 2 realities: nature, nurture. Nature, nurture. Nature is how God wired you. So just your giftings and just how you've been shaped in regards to how God has fearfully and wonderfully made you. Understanding that. Nurture is the things that shape you that are positive and negative in that space. So when we begin to deep dive this, and I would say to any leader, someone asked me this the other day, walking down some steps. They're like, hey, leadership tip. I go, one statement: you can't lead others if you can't lead yourself, and you can't lead yourself if you don't know yourself.
Wow.
Can't lead
That's
others
awesome.
if you can't lead yourself. And if you can't lead yourself, that's because you don't know yourself. And most people don't do the work to deep dive into who they are, whose they are. And because we've heard that part before preached 1,000 times. But the thing that you don't hear people preach is the why you are. It is, what is the why that God's placed on you? And so I think for me, that was coaching. He looked at me, Steve Cockrum looked at me, and man, and maybe this is like podcast episode 2, if you'll ever allow me to be a part of this again.
Oh gosh, yeah.
He said to me, he said, Ed, guys like you, he goes, I'll give you 7 years in this role, doing what you're doing, how you're doing it, operating the way you're operating. And he said 3 things. He says, you'll have a moral failure, you'll burn out, or you'll take your bag of tricks and go somewhere else.
Wow.
I said, what did you see after spending a day with me that led you to that statement? He goes, screw tape letters. Let's reverse engineer this. If I'm the enemy and I'm going to take you out, here's what I do. I just maximize the insecurities. And he used this triangle, and I'm not doing an Illuminati sign, but if he's doing a triangle, all right, he said, guys like you get revelation. You walk with God. God gives you a word. You come down the mountain. He said, but down at the bottom of the triangle is application and interpretation. He says, guys like you are feelers. You walk into rooms and you could just flip it. There's a magnetism. He says, so you walk in high revelation and lead to application. He said, but the problem is you lead a team. He goes, and he used this analogy. He goes, as an evangelist, you are the track star. You're solo. You were solo, track star. He goes, and now he says, you're leading this organization like a basketball coach. You only see the one coach pacing the sidelines. There's people on the bench, but you never see them. So it's still about you. He goes, I got to get you to be a football coach that operates with a special teams offensive coordinator and a defensive coordinator, and you see them. And he began to help me make that shift, because he said revelation can't go to application because you're a feeler. And he goes, and 95% of the time you're right in the moment, but you don't know what that did to your team when you stood on that stage and you had an idea and it was in real time and you included nobody in it. And then watch this, Danny. Then he goes, so what I'm asking you to do is not go revelation to application, but go revelation to interpretation that goes to application, because in the interpretation, you're able to maximize the voices of people around you. And he said, here's the deal. Guys like you who operate in revelation application, when it doesn't go well, you blame it on the people you didn't include. If they would have just been more committed,
Yeah.
if they would have just had a deeper, do they really care? You know, all the while they're like, yeah, we do. We just didn't know that you were going to do that. So he helped me begin to understand my voice. Yeah. And that's why I would say to anybody listening, the most pivotal moment of marking me was understanding my voice. No disrespect to Enneagram, too complicated for me. No disrespect to Strength Finders and all, too complicated. 5 voices, everybody's got them. 3 of them are your right hand voices, 2 of them are your left hand voices, and we have all of them. If you operate if I'm left-handed, I can write my name left-handed, but you told me to write a book left-handed, I'm exhausted. I'm going to say this to somebody right now. There is a right-handed leader that's in a position that's operating left-handed, and you're exhausted. And you'll just keep writing left-handed because you're going, well, I don't know how to do anything but this, because if I don't, who will? The moment you can begin to go, okay, these are my giftings. These are the right-handed elements. Surround myself with the left-handed things for me, which, by the way, sounds a lot like our marriage, does it not? So
yes, it does.
And that's the reason why I think Jesus, who obviously understood, he says, I've given some to be apostles, pastors, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers. So he gives 5 distinctions in what we call APEST. Why? Because not everybody can be an apostle. Because apostles will actually go to war with prophets. And shepherds and teachers have a lot in common, but shepherds and teachers will get frustrated with apostles because all they do is take ground. Evangelists kind of blow in, blow out, and they're like, I'm exhausted teaching in one place over and over and over again. You're sucking the life out of me, So you could see how Jesus builds his church with the components of different forms of leadership. And I'll say this out loud. Don't let somebody tell you that only apostles could lead. That's not true. We have all things that we need for life and godliness. I think sometimes spiritual formation, leadership conversations get really weird in this. It's like the best leaders are extroverted apostles.
Sure.
You're like,
sure.
Not true. I think the best leaders are leaders that know themselves well.
Hey guys, thanks so much for tuning in to this incredible conversation with Pastor Ed Newton from Community Bible Church. I hope it's been an encouragement to you so far. We're going to be pausing the episode right now, but be sure to check us out next week for part 2 of this conversation. God bless.